ready to finish up our painting? We are going to come back to the watercolor rain painting that we did. We started with a semicircle sticker, which protected part of our painting from the watercolor drip. And now we're going to focus on this area and add our figure. So I'm going to zoom in so that you can get a better look. Okay, so this is where our figure is going to be. I'm actually going to practice on the back of one of my sheets of paper that I wasn't so happy with. So if you can work in your sketchbook, or you can work in on the back of a piece of your multimedia paper, whatever works for you. But I'm going to practice here so that I'm happy about what my plan is before I go to my final here. So I'm just going to lay this over, and we initially had the umbrella was half of a circular sticker. So I'm going to go ahead and trace my semicircle so that I can practice with the right shape. Now I can take off the semicircle, and if you remember, we also indicated where the ground was, and it was 1.5 times below, so someplace in here. I'm going to start by drawing using my pencil. I'm using my B pencil, but an HB pencil would work also. And I'm going to make this semicircle into an umbrella. First thing I'm going to do is find the center top and make the top of my umbrella stand. And then I'm going to find right below it and between the two edges of my semicircle, that's going to be the center of my umbrella. Now I'm going to make a nice big arc starting from that center point almost to the edge, but not quite. So maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of the way to the edge. And then I'm going to make another curve that is going to go all the way to the edge. My plan being that this is going to help my umbrella look like it is curving. And what's really going to help that is that when I put the rib structure from the umbrella in, it's going to go from the bottom of that point, curve up, and to the top of my umbrella. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So that looks pretty convincing. Now I'm going to draw my figure underneath. Now I first saw this painting, a version of this painting with a girl, that was Gideon, with a girl that was standing under the umbrella, and so that's what I'm going to draw. But you know, there's lots of variations of this that you could change it up. You could put a boy, you could put a kid in galoshes, you could put two people, you could really do lots of things under here. So I'm going to show you my version of it, and if you like it, after you practice it, you can decide if you want to do it, use that on your final painting or not. If you practice this in your sketchbook and you decide that you would rather do something else on your final, that's okay. So we are going to use our half circle as a measuring device to help us with proportions. So I'm only going to be using half of the circle, so you can go ahead if you'd like to and carefully fold it Now it doesn't matter if you use which of the two straight edges, it doesn't matter. You can use either of the two straight edges. What you're going to do is from the corner, from one corner to another along one of the straight edges, you're going to make a little mark at the top, and that's going to be her head. And then you're going to go down to the bottom of that straight edge and make a little mark. That's going to be her waist. You're going to take your measuring unit and move it down another length. That's going to be the bottom of her skirt, and one more length is going to be her feet, where her feet are. So these are a little bit exaggerated. They're not 100% perfect in terms of proportions of the human body, but I think it's going to get us pretty close. So the top mark was the top of her head, and then her waist was the second mark down. So that means that we have her upper body in this section. We're going to start with a circle, or an oval is even more kind of realistic. And that oval is going to be about a third the distance between those two marks. And then we're going to make shoulders, and kind of like a kernel of corn. Oh my gosh, it's October, and kind of like a candy corn, how it comes down to almost like a point, like a little candy corn thing. You know that? That's the shape that we're looking for. It's the top of her body. Shoulders are out here, doesn't show any arms, and the waist is in here. Okay? And then we're going to go ahead and put on a skirt. So it's going to come after the waist, it's going to come out just a little bit, and maybe have kind of a fullish skirt, like a bell or a tulip. And then her legs are going to be underneath there with her feet down at the ground line. So we're going to make sure she's walking, so her feet are going to be right under the center of her, and she's going to have a leg that her calf comes out and then narrows down to her ankle. And she's got some kind of heel on, and then the other one is actually walking in front of her, some kind of heel. And now we can give her some sense of an arm. And this one is kind of like walking and leaning in front of her, and then another one that would be holding the umbrella. So we can kind of start with these proportions. Looks like her head needs to be a little bit bigger. Maybe she has a raincoat on. With a skirt underneath. And maybe she has long hair. Like so. So that when we add ink using our handy dandy Sharpie, we can decide to just go over the lines that we're happy with. I'm not quite sure why this woman isn't wearing galoshes. She's wearing heels. That doesn't seem like a very smart thing, but I can't explain it. She is. So if you go through the process of making our little girl and you decide that you would rather do something different under your umbrella, that is absolutely fine. This is your project. As long as you work through it on a practice piece of paper, if you make a different decision, then that's okay with me. So I'm going to go ahead and put her in our watercolor, rainy watercolor world, and show you how to give her just a little bit of watercolor on her, and then our project will be done. So I'm going to put this right here. And see if I can do the same thing twice. All right, so I have my measuring device. I'm going to start by giving myself the little part on the top of the umbrella. And I'm going to find the middle between the two edges and the top. And this is where I'm going to make a nice big curve. And then a curve that's just as tall, it's the same height. That's important. Same height, but it's more narrow because the umbrella is curving. I'm going to do the same thing, give myself a little start and stop point. The stop point should be maybe 3/4 of the way to the edge. And then give myself a nice big curve. And then a tall curve that is more narrow. And I'm going to make the ribs of my umbrella like so. Okay, now I'm ready to make my girl. So I'm going to put her head just to the left of the center of the umbrella and kind of up a little bit in the umbrella because she's trying to stay away from the wet. And then I'm going to measure down and give myself a little mark. The top is her head, the bottom is her waist. Now I'm moving my little measuring device down, coming down another unit. That's going to be the bottom of her skirt. It's also her knees. And now I'm coming down one more time. And you notice that her feet are going to be below the ground line, and that is absolutely fine. So that's going to be the ground. This one might end up getting galoshes. Okay, it cracks me up. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give her a head, which is about 1/4 of the distance between the top mark and the bottom. And then I'm going to give her that candy corn shape. To her waist. And then I'm gonna, the bottom, this is where her skirt comes out. So I'm gonna let her skirt come out, kind of like a bell shape. Okay, and then I'm going to let her have legs that come out. She still looks funny because I haven't given her arms and so forth, but, and yeah, why not? I think she needs to have galoshes. So So her calves get thicker and then they come down and they get thinner. And then there's one that's in front of the other one. So it's just going to mimic. And I can't really, over here she had probably like skin color on her skin. But you can see that that's going to cause problems because where I have the ground, since I didn't plan for this, it's going to look weird. You're going to see the grass through her skin. So I'm going to give her galoshes. Actually, I'm going to give her tall boots. I love that. These are like, you know, tall boots that somebody would wear in the rain. That's much more practical than heels. Now she's walking away from us. I'm just seeing her back. So I'm going to keep that in mind. Give her a second boot. This one's going to be a little taller than the other one because she's kind of stepping up. Narrowing at the, because she's walking away. I like that. It's much more practical. And I did like how it looked that she had a raincoat on. So we're going to give her a raincoat, cute little raincoat. We're going to give her a cute little belt. She's looking a little bit too emaciated in the waist. I had to make sure she had dinner, so add that a little thicker. And then give her arms. And this one is coming off of the shoulder, coming down, and it's just maybe she's carrying a purse or something like that in front of her. And then this one is carrying the umbrella, so it's going to be out just a little bit. She's carrying an umbrella. She's still going to have hair that's coming down. Okay, now that I have it sketched out with my pencil, I can use my Sharpie, and I'm going to use my thin Sharpie to bring out some of these details. Sharpie is such a really nice pairing with watercolor because it is very strong, but the thin Sharpie is also kind of delicate. And watercolor can be very strong, but oftentimes it is a delicate medium. So I'm just tracing over like so. She's holding the umbrella, so maybe the handle's coming down just over her shoulder. And I'm going to give her some hair and shoulders. And her belt. Maybe little belt rings. Maybe give her a skirt that's underneath, and much more practical boots. There we go. Now this might look a little funny because it's where it was helping me to know the size of her head related to her shoulders, but I'm just going to go ahead and decide that she has dark hair. like so. Pretty cute. Now I'm just going to add a little bit of watercolor on her, and I'm going to do so by finding my smallest watercolor brush. It's round and it's small, and it's going to give me just the right amount of detail. You could leave this exactly like it is, and maybe I want to, since her hair is dark, maybe I want to make her boots black too. And I'm going to have much more control with my Sharpie. And I might just leave a very thin line between the boots so that they look like two individual boots instead of one big clump. So do you see how I just used my Sharpie, but I left a space between the two boots? That's kind of a neat trick that artists often do when big areas of dark value start to merge multiple shapes. But I think I will go ahead and add just a little bit of color on her. I can either go very dark or I can go very bright. There's no rules here. I'm somewhere in between wanting to use red or wanting to use black. I think maybe what I will do is make her umbrella black and make her coat red. So that sounds like a good plan. So I'm going to do my color first, just I usually do. So I'm going to be picking up some red, and let's make her let's make her coat nice and red. Actually might add just a little bit of orange in there because I really like this orangey red. There we go. Cute. And now I'm going to make the umbrella a gray. I kind of like the concept, the idea of her being bright and the world being bright, and then balancing out this bright world with a gray umbrella. So I can do gray a couple of ways. I can actually use my watercolor gray, which is an option, or I can use watered down black. Let's see what this does. Now make sure that when you're coloring in a shape and you're trying to be very careful about keeping the paint in the shape, that you use the shape of the brush. Since the brush comes to a point, and since I have points on my umbrella, then I want to make sure and turn my brush in order to use that shape of the brush so that it works really well. And sometimes it helps me to turn my, instead of twisting my arm, just to turn my paper is sometimes a nice, easier way of dealing with those shapes. And I like how this is looking, but it is a little bit flat gray. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of the black and add a little bit of black so that there's a bit of a gradient. At the bottom of the umbrella. See if I can make it darker at the bottom. I'm just adding a little bit more paint. Whoop. Okay, looking like it's all gonna get darker. It's okay. Kind of move it around until it lands in a good spot for you. There we are. If you would like to, you can add a little bit of depth with the umbrella, or you could even come back if you wanted to add more rain. You can do that as well. It's up to you. If you're happy with it and you would like to, you can sign in the bottom. Awesome. Thanks, guys.